And we're live. Everybody, thank you very much for coming back tonight to the PigSty. Tonight we have been very lucky to be joined by Craig Reid. And I don't know if anyone knows, and I know that I have mainly an atheist audience, and I have mentioned your name to a few people, man, who didn't actually know who you are. And I know you've been on the scene for a while. So if you want to just give a shout out to yourself, let everyone know who you are and where they can find you.
Sure. My name is Craig Reid. I'm surprised they didn't know me, actually. I have a pretty decent association with most of the atheists. I know a bunch, and a lot of the bigger ones are the ones I call the more prominent ones have appeared on my channel. Like I've interviewed GM Skeptic, Apologist, Shannon.
Yeah. I was shocked. Do you know what it is? It's because I think you're polite. That's
yeah. No, because I don't have the reputation of being like the jerk that everyone hates, who like Matt Powell or Dark Dawkins, who everybody knows. Definitely, that's part of it. But also, my channel's small, so they might not have seen the interview. I don't know. It could be a lot of reasons, but that's definitely one. I'm not infamous, or at least not yet. This stream hasn't started yet, so
the link is in the description for anyone. They should definitely give Craig a sub. As Craig does mention, he does get big names. I've seen him with, as he mentioned, GM Skeptic has been on twice. Was on a couple of years ago, and then I think only last month you had him on again. You have good debates and good discussions as well. And you'd also see, what's he changed his name now to? Digital Gnosis, who used to be Nathan. Yes. You would see.
I think he's been on twice at this point. I was on his channel once. I also had Drew's wife. That was the most recent. That was pretty interesting. Drew's wife calls herself the Anti-Bot, and she does like multi-level marketing. That's like her jam. She has a channel. It's growing pretty quickly. Cut you off. Go ahead.
The first thing I usually ask people, man, is what brought them to YouTube. And the reason I ask them is we do have a lot more atheists here. It's been close to a year now. Well, it would be about maybe 10 months since I've had an interview with a Christian. They seem to not want to come onto my channel, but I ask people why they've started, and I usually find with the atheist guests that I have is that something has happened. They were Christian and then they've changed. And you're obviously a Christian. Have you always been a Christian your entire life, or?
No. I was raised like nominally Catholic, but I grew up in a very secular. I grew up in Westchester County, which is a suburb of New York City, and it's really, really secular. Most of my friends were secular Jews. It's a really kind of wealthy, well-educated community. Most of the people I know went to like Ivy League schools. I didn't, but all my friends were I wasn't. My friends were well-educated. And I was nominally Catholic, which means we went to church Easter and Christmas, but nobody expected me to believe what I was in church too. They would have been really surprised if I said to my mom, I'm really tracking with this Jesus thing. She would have been like, you are? Like nobody expected me to actually adopt the faith.
Yes.
And we even as technically Catholics, I remember sitting around a dinner table having a conversation, do you believe in God? So we were Catholics, technically, but we even conversed about whether we believed in God. And, my mom was kind of a maybe to no. I was a maybe to no. My dad was a yes. And then I guess you would call me a non. I was pretty much agnostic till I was about 28, 29. But somewhere in about 23, I was a really big partier. In high school, I was a big drinker, smoked a lot of weed, typical like stoner, kind of slacker stoner type. A lot of weed. There was a really lot of drugs in the 80s. And then, I was a big party in college, and then somewhere along the way, I went into recovery. And that's probably kind of where I started getting really curious about religion. It happened a little bit before that, but I started really investigating, like reading a lot of philosophy, a lot of New Age stuff, stuff like Nietzsche, and then Bhagavad Gita, and Tao Te Ching, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, because
Go ahead.
When I do listen to your streams, I've seen you, and I'm not going to admit, but I have flipped over to SJ's channel the odd time and watched maybe a wee bit. I'm not a big fan of her, but I always feel that you're very articulate in your arguments and the way that you put yourself forward. A lot of the people that we interact with here they just scream at you, look at the trees and things like that. It's a very not productive sort of conversation, and it doesn't fucking go anywhere.
You're talking about the Christian apologists, the quality of their arguments to convince you, or is just yeah, I agree. Definitely. I started becoming intellectually convinced there was a God somewhere before I became a Christian. And intellectually is kind of like, I was sort of like a Jordan Peterson-esque person, reading some of the same stuff he talks about, Jung and, stuff like that. I was kind of leaning towards New Age, and I don't know if you know anything about AA, but it's like they encourage you to be spiritual in the program. So I was like, trying to meditate and do things like that. And then I met my wife, and she, at the time, as far as I knew, wasn't a practicing Christian at all. I was actually really surprised to learn that she was kind of raised Christian, because we were very worldly, to say the least. We drank a lot. I drank a lot, and we were actors in New York City, partiers. She didn't really drink or do drugs, which should have been my tip-off. But I had no idea that she had any sort of Christianity at all. And then one day she tells me, I went to a Benny Hinn thing, and I had no idea what she was talking about. She's like, I want to go to a Benny Hinn thing. And Benny Hinn's just like, he's kind of, a lot of people think he's ridiculous. He's kind of a spiritual healer. And I had no idea who he was. I had no idea what she was. When you're not raised Christian in the suburbs, you really don't know anything about a lot of this stuff. Like, the only Christian person I'd heard of was James Baker. I heard obviously of Billy Graham, but there's a whole bunch of people like William Lane Craig, for example. I didn't even know who that was until I got on Twitter. I'd never heard of him.
Well, I'm UK, man. I'm over in Northern Ireland, so we would have been raised something similar to yourself. And I'm a Protestant. In Northern Ireland, it's mainly Catholic and Protestant, but it's mainly that of a cultural point. The Catholics and the Protestants would be raised something like yourself. As I say, you go to church on a Sunday, you go there, and on Christmas and things like that. But nobody really. You get through the motions,
or practice it, or takes. Yeah, how I was raised is almost exactly where England is at. Totally, it's secular, and that there are pockets of the United States that are like that. The wealthy suburbs that are near the cities. They're very European, even in attitude, liberal, really left-wing town. I didn't even know Republicans or Christians till I was in college. My wife actually is English, half English. We went to England in 2000, stayed with her family for 3 weeks, and we went to Dublin for New Year's Eve, and that was crazy fun. But she was raised American, so she tells me that she's going to this Benny Hinn thing, and I encouraged it. I thought it was like a spiritual hero. I'm like, that sounds really positive. So, wow. And then she goes to it, and she tells me that she what is the word she used? She said something like, I recommitted my life to the Lord, or something like that. It's some sort of phrase.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what she meant. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. That sounds nice, dear. And then then one day she says to me, I want to move out to Malibu. And apparently she'd been flying back and forth to Malibu. She had some friends out here that she would crash with. She knew a lot of celebrities at the time, still kind of does, but back then she was really connected to I don't know, weird sort of people you would have definitely heard of. There's a party celebrity circuit.
We'll not discuss what went on in them parties. We know what the Hollywood was like in the
80s. Yes, exactly. And so she says she wants to move out to Malibu, and I, move with her. And at one point she says to me, she starts going to this local church right down the road, and she says to me, I want you to meet this prophet guy. I want you to come to church tonight. I wasn't going with her, and I was like, okay. I wanted to get out of work. I was working as either a dishwasher, I think, at the time. And I was like, or a busboy. I forget. I was working at some little restaurant right down the road. And this prophet guy, it was this really interesting experience. So I don't remember the guy's name, but he says, does anybody want me to prophesy over them? And I was like, yeah, I'm down. And he's like, oh, Craig, he's a New Yorker. And like, he starts saying this stuff over me that really struck me. Like, it's really, like, he could have easily pieced it together just from looking at me. But he starts saying, like, you've been in a war your whole life. You've been this, that. And he starts saying this stuff really quickly. And it really struck me. And I broke down and started crying. And I accepted the Lord that night. And was very convinced that that was an experience with actually God. But I didn't really start fully connecting until, I don't know, this church was really good. It was called the Malibu Vineyard, and it was like, it wasn't like your typical, it wasn't a very religious church. People were pretty normal, and there was some of like your typical church types. There always is, but there was like, pretty mellow, laid back, and like this church for a while was really, really like an on fire, fun, creative place to be. And I started becoming really, really committed to Christianity somewhere in the first 5 or 6 months. Me and my wife came back to the Lord, and I started becoming like a really, really committed Christian. And then what am I getting to? YouTube, my YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's fine, man, because it's good to get a bit of backstory about a person, because we get to know. I know we ramble on, so don't worry. We all do that here. I'm the tangent king here, so don't worry.
Okay, good. Because if you put a microphone in front of me and say, talk, I can do it for 2.5 hours if nobody stops me. And then my wife and I went here, and you're like, oh, okay, that's really interesting, Craig.
No, well, I could ask you a question, and I could be like, right, Craig, how did you find God? And you were like, I went to a church, man put his hand over the top of me, he did a whole Darren Brown thing, and he read me, told me a load of stories, and then I found Jesus. But there's context to it and how you got there. There's your wife before it, so it does give a better picture of it, like.
Right. That's why, yes, totally, I agree. YouTube, why I got on YouTube, I started watching a lot of YouTube videos when YouTube first came out, because I was so impressed with, like, they had Rolling Stones concerts and a lot of cool stuff that I couldn't believe I could see live.
Yeah.
Doors concerts, Rolling Stones concerts, Led Zeppelin concerts.
I think me and you's got a very, very similar taste in music, man.
Yeah, totally. Well, I was blown away, because I was raised in, like, the classic rock 80s era, and you couldn't see any of this stuff live. I mean, people told you, even Nirvana. I was blown away watching live Nirvana. I like them. Clash concerts. But so I started watching a lot of YouTube, and I started clicking on these, like, amazing atheists, Jacqueline Glenn, Nina something. She's some sort of well-known atheist, forget her name, Thunderfoot, and Cult of Dusty.
Yeah,
so
you're talking real old school names there, like, yeah.
I started watching those guys, all of them, for entertainment. Just like, this is really, Jacqueline Glenn in particular, I thought she was kind of fun. So I'm watching this stuff, and I kind of relate to the vibe. I was like, I'll probably get along with atheists. Because they're somewhat like me. They seem really philosophical. They ask a lot of questions that I think I can address or answer, we can talk about, maybe I should start doing this. And I never really thought about apologetics before that. I didn't even really truly know what it meant. And like I said, never heard of William Lane Craig until I started Twitter. So I started Twitter, when I started, it was right when Hillary versus Trump.
2016, was it 15?
And I started somewhere around August of that year. And from there, I started debating atheists on Twitter. And then somewhere in there, I was like, maybe I'll start a YouTube channel. And just thought I'd kind of see what happened. And I don't know, it hasn't taken off. I'm about to say, it really took off from there. It hasn't taken off at all. But like, I don't know, I was on this stream with Godless Cranium and Genetically Modified Skeptic and Shannon right at the start. I'm still pretty friends with Godless Cranium. I'm friends with them all, actually.
Yeah. You did get kicked out. If I was talking to one of the mods correctly last night, did you give Kirsten shit and then you got kicked out of the Atheist Experience chat last night?
No, I didn't get kicked out. But
or timed out even, sorry.
What?
Or timed out even.
No, as far as I know, I didn't get timed out. I was talking about the second thing they did last night was like they were really being bad with one of those guys. and I was complaining about it. And someone got mad at me. Best name ever, I think her name is.
Yeah.
Got mad at me for complaining about it. I was like, I'm allowed to complain about how they're treating somebody. Sorry. So if I'm treating someone bad on my channel, I'm not going to silence people in the...
That is one of the reasons why I reached out to you, is because I have heard that you're very cordial. You can have a conversation with a person. He's not going to come in. He's not going to scream and shout. You're not going to call you names or anything like that. And we can bounce off each other.
Unless you give me a reason to. If you are cool with me, I'll be cool right back. No, it's 100 times out of 100. Unless you give me a reason to not like you personally, I will, want to have a conversation with you, and I'll treat you, as respectfully as you should be treated. I never start shit with people, ever.
You say that you were raised a Catholic. What would you consider yourself now?
I guess I'm a non-denominational Christian, just a Christian. But I think the technical term is either charismatic or non-denominational. But I don't really know that much about Christians themselves. If you're raised Christian, it's very different, because they themselves get really, really weird about stuff that's meaningless to me, totally meaningless to me, like Southern Baptist versus this. And I'm like, dude, if you're not raised Christian, you don't care, because you don't know. You don't really, I don't know. It's hard to explain. You don't really.
I've seen you, as you say, man, you've had a lot of interactions. You can get on well with atheists and stuff. I've seen you in rooms with people like Vackle, people like G-Man, and SJ and things like that. And, them sort of conversations with them sort of people. I know SJ is well educated, and fuck G-Man and fuck Vackle. They're just screaming, they just shout.
I don't know very much about either of them. She started streaming with them about a year ago, I guess.
Yeah.
And I know he has a reputation, and I've seen a handful of his debates. My thing is, I don't go off of how people act towards other people. If you're cool to me, I'm cool back to you. So I don't judge you on even someone like Aaron Ra, who can be kind of aggressive with Christians on his channel. I will never fault him for that unless he does it to me personally. Mm-hmm. Then I will hold him accountable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't see the beginning of it. I don't really know.
Well, the reason I bring that up is, from your stance, from your point of view, having these obviously a lot more in-depth conversations with them than I've had. Would you consider them, obviously they're not similar, they're not the same denomination of a Christian as you, but from what I've seen of G-Man and what I've seen of Vackle and things like that, the conversations don't go anywhere. Do you find that, what do you gain from involving yourself with?
I've never really watched G-Man or Vackle. Stephanie's a really good friend of mine, and I actually really like Stephanie. I understand that atheists hate her, and I make fun of that on my channel all the time. I really like
As you say, man, you don't treat anyone bad unless they treat you bad. We organised a debate. She then looked at the channel and says, I can only do these days. And I was like, well, that's the only days that I stream. And then I changed it for her, and then she wouldn't do it. And then I says, right, I'll do it at this time. And then she wouldn't do it before another time. She just fucked me about for literally a month and a half. And I was like, right, well, clearly you don't want to fucking come on then.
A lot of people, from what I've gathered, have weird stories like that. And why I can never judge that is I don't know what atheists were doing to her and what they were saying to her, because there's a lot of atheists who just congregate around her and act like total douchebags to her.
Maybe it's just the Irish upbringing. I prefer to be blunt. I reached out to Cy Gart. He said, no bother, let me have a look at your channel. He then come back to me and says, no, don't think I'd like it. And I went dead on. That's it. Didn't bother him again.
Oh, snap, man. You're getting shot down.
But I'd appreciate, he was honest, and I appreciate that. And, I still have more respect I have the same amount of respect for him at the start of that than I do now, because he didn't fuck me about and he wasn't an asshole about it,
Right.
That's where I see the problem with these people is you don't gain anything from conversations with these people. I do this for the audience. I bring these people on like yourself from other points of view, and I bring people on from other points of view, and I have these conversations for the audience so that the audience can leave with questions. Where if I watch freaking G-Man, it's just an entertainment joke show there. He's screaming or someone else is screaming. And other apologetics, I'm not just meaning to pick on them, but, other apologists that I see online that we're having in the community at the minute, they just scream, they shout, they're not fair.
Like Darth Dawkins, for example.
Would be a prime example. And just, we do refer to him here as Asshole 104.
Right, because what he does, from what I've seen, is just try to like, he was on the stream with Stephanie and Nathan actually, and he starts demanding that Stephanie moderate it. Nathan, which means like mute his mic so that he can talk over him, basically, and Stephanie wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And
I've had him on the
Stephanie,
channel twice.
Stephanie, you should poke around, because there are Stephanie detractors, but there are some atheists who like Stephanie. There's some. They're not very many. I don't think I have any detractors at this point. I'd be surprised. And if they are, I haven't interacted with. I mean, you can go watch my interviews with people on my channel. Never jerk anybody's chin, ever. I'm just trying to find out, how you became an atheist, why you believe what you believe, and just trying to investigate. Really, I'm not.
A short version of mine is, as I say, I was Protestant over here. We were Presbyterian. My mother didn't like the way the Presbyterians were more you're going to hell than going to heaven, so she then took us out. Being in Northern Ireland, my mum's very cross-border, and she sent me to the Salvation Army because they both accepted Catholics and Protestants. And whenever my mother and father broke up, there was an incident there and stuff, and I went up looking for like a hug, not proof of God or anything, but that what you said you experienced, that right. Moment that you experienced with that guy, I was looking something like that to just, everything's going to be okay. And I didn't get that. And then over the course of a year or so, I left the church then.
Right. See, the church that I first connected with was actually very ministering. And my wife and I, we were very worldly, and like we were, we went to a lot of parties and stuff like that, but there was a part of us that was wounded. And this church really helped us. They were really loving and compassionate, and that was a huge part of what the church was about. And that's surprisingly really hard to find. I didn't think it was all that rare until I started poking around, like, wow, that was really exceptional. There's a lot of most people's experience with church. I remember Nathan was talking about, he started attending some church and they were all kind of like really weird, hypocritical douchebags. And they were talking about, you're going to go to hell if you think this, and you're going to go to hell if you think that, and laying head trips on people and not really being very compassionate or Christ-like or in any way healthy, So I can totally understand why people walk away from those type of environments, because they're destructive. Ideally, a church shouldn't be like that.
No, well, the Salvation Army for me was very accepting. I left in around 11, maybe 12 or so I did leave at a young age, but they had both a male and a female, it's laid out like the army. And, excuse me, the first time he came in, he went and played football with us. We had a Friday night club where we went and watched hockey and had pizza, and then had Bible study afterwards. It was a very accepting church. I'd go 2 or 3 times on a Sunday. It was that moment of not getting that, that personal testimony, so to speak. Right. That's what, because I still have my Salvation Army Bible beside me, top of class, stickers covered head to toe. I was in training to become a junior soldier, as they call it, but it was not getting that got it for me, that put me down the route of leaving the church. I would say that my mother always raised me to think critically, Hardy Boys growing up and 500 Questions and Answers. These are the books that she gave me. And I felt that leaving the church then, I started to think more critically. Oh, well, again, I'm only 11. I'm becoming an adult at that stage too. But, I feel that hearing your story is, obviously we've got context and there's this, that and the other. But a lot of times after that, when I have these conversations with people, there is this hole in their life that they're looking to fill. And the church gives that to them. People who go to church, people who have been to church, Christians who go to church, and you see these like a story like yourself, there was a lot of pain, a lot of turmoil, a lot of drugs and things like that. And then the hole was then filled with Jesus. I know that's very derogatory to say, like.
Well, that's a way of perceiving it for sure. But most people, if you're actually paying attention to where you're at emotionally, if you're 26, 27, 28-year-old, and somebody says you're broken in this way, if you're honest, you'll find it. And be like, yeah, that's me. Because there aren't that many like really whole, healthy, functioning human beings who don't have pain to some degree. I mean, life is difficult, and we do the best we can. And most of your parents, my parents were kind of healthy, but not really.
Yeah.
There's a part when you're like 14. I talked about this with my sister. When you're 14 years old, I thought my parents had the ideal marriage, and then when I was 19, I was like, I couldn't believe what a dysfunctional mess they actually were. There's a part where you start waking up to reality, So, in a way, you could look at it as like, however you just explained it like that.
I did go back. I went back to. Now, I'm not going to say it was a cult or anything like that, but it was a real fucking weird church, and it was in a hotel. It was in one of the function rooms down the back, and it was a girlfriend at the time that I was dating, and she went to this church, and I went with her. At this stage now, man, I'm wearing leather jackets, and I'm a full goth with the nail varnish and everything, turning up to this fucking evangelist church in the back, right?
Awesome.
And I would go and ask him questions afterwards, and I went to 5 or 6 different ones, and I, have conversations with these people. And I do remember there was a woman there and she lost her son. I think I met 3 alcoholics that were now reformed because of, what they found through Christ and things like that. The reason I stopped going was because one question I did ask him is he did a story about how the devil can test us. And I thought it was very poignant, to alcoholism and losing this. And, he sends us tests for us to work through, for us to feel better afterwards. And the question I asked him was, how can you tell the difference between the devil punishing you and God testing you? And he thought about it for a minute and he was like, I can't answer you that. That's down to you and your experience. So again, it's just bringing it all back to personal testimony. And that's what I find. I know you say that you're intellectually convinced. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I was becoming intellectually convinced before I actually had a Christian. The thing that happened to me that turned me into a Christian was a personal religious experience. And I have a lot of those. And I talk about them a lot on my channel. I don't expect those to be convincing to people who aren't having them. Because to me, it's an experience. To you listening to me, it's a testimony. It's not an actual experience.
Exactly.
Right? So I get that. And I totally understand if you're going to church and nothing is really happening, that you honestly can go, I really feel like God is communicating me or talking to me through this organization or this presentation, then of course you're going to disconnect and kind of start wandering around looking for other things, right? Because the juice or the what is supposed to be there as advertised, you're not actually finding. Is that, did I hear you right? Is that kind of
I was into it, and it all made sense to me. Again, man, I'm only 11 or 12, and I've always been around this, so it's been ingrained in me. I wouldn't go so far as saying indoctrinated, because my mother never really went to church. It was just something that the family, you've got married and you've had kids. You go to church on a Sunday now and send the kids to Sunday school. Whenever we started going to the Salvation Army, she was brilliant. She was like, I don't have to go to church anymore because the Salvation Army picked us up on a bus and took us to Sunday school. She's like, I don't have to go to church anymore. God's everywhere. Brilliant. I can stay at home. She never really pushed it upon us. But what I'm...
So she was only like a half committed, wasn't...
Well, I've had this conversation with my mum, and I think the conclusion and the name, sort of the pigeonhole, I don't like to pigeonhole people, but the pigeonhole I could put her in would be a spiritual Christian. God is at the top of the Christian God, and she believes in Jesus, but I've had, I could say that there's some deistic points that she has and things like that as well. But at the core...
A lot of people on the ground floor who actually practice Christianity don't concern themselves with a lot of these theological questions. They just go to church and they have some sort of I feel better about my life and the condition of the universe in general when I go to church and I get inspired to it's not, they're not philosophers, they're not theologians. They don't really care about some of the stuff that we talk about on Twitter and YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So I totally understand that. And they're more what they're looking for on the ground floor is like, God help me in my time of need. My son is in the hospital. Can you do something for me? And if a church is actually functional properly, they should be able to do something for you somewhat, to a certain degree. Well, what was the thing you were just talking about? You were just...
No, I mean, Well, it was the intellectual point, where, you know, because as you say, what we go through, most people when you talk to them, and the guarantee, you know, the solid proof that they've been through, the reason that they know that God exists always seems to fall on the personal testimony. And as you've agreed, personal testimony is never enough to convince someone who hasn't been through it or hasn't experienced it himself.
For you listening to me, it is not a personal experience. It's a testimony. That's the only thing that's the evidence you are getting, testimony, which there's no difference to you from listening to me, to listening to a Muslim, to listening to a Mormon. They all sound like testimonies because they're all testimonies.
So the intellectual side that you were convinced of and leaning towards...
It's hard to explain. So I was let's see, what was do you watch the Jordan Peterson lectures at all?
Whenever I first found Jordan Peterson, I watched him for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, and thought he was absolutely fantastic, man. Did a wee bit more digging and a wee bit deeper, and then it was like, okay, and right now where I stand is like, I don't fucking like Jordan Peterson, no.
Okay, because there's another guy you might like better named John Vervaeke, who I watched about 50 of his Meaning Crisis videos. He's more of an atheist. He calls himself a non-theist, but he doesn't necessarily believe in God. Yeah. He doesn't kind of hedge like Jordan Peterson. Sometimes you ask him and he goes, well, it depends on what you mean by God.
It's fucking all that, man. It's all that. I find Jordan Peterson redefines an awful lot of things to fit his narrative. You know, if you define a certain thing into existence, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, he does a lot of let's define our terms type of stuff. Yeah. And I don't find it fake, but I can understand why people think he's playing games, so to speak, because he never comes right out and says X is X.
Well, right? the problem I find with that is because, you know, as I say, the first month or two that I watched him, I thought he was great. And I could see, even from an atheistic point of view, some points he was trying to make. But as you get a wee bit deeper... he'll define a word, right? And then he'll make a statement or write a paragraph or write a fucking book on this under this definition, but people don't understand that that's that definition. So they take it in a different way. He doesn't use words what most people would colloquially, and with that, there's an ability to manipulate people into... It's dishonest, if you understand what I mean.
There's some sleight of hand going on.
Yes. Yes.
Constantly redefining things so that he can be the sole arbiter of certain type. Yeah, I get that. That's probably because he was a university professor. I bet you that's common. The other guy who if you're interested in some of the intellectual, I strongly recommend John Vervaeke. He's better than Jordan Peterson in terms of what he's bringing to the table intellectually. He's a neuroscientist.
Yes.
And, he's not a Christian, but he's very pro-religion. And what he talks about is very similar to where I was before I became a Christian. I was really interested in, like, you know, there's an actual reality to what spiritual experience and meditation stuff can do to you physiologically. There's even Sam Harris understands this. He has a book. What's it called? Something about his meditation practices, awakening or something like that.
Again, I'm not a big fan of Sam. No, I'm not a huge fan of him.
I'm striking out with my name. Matt Dillahunty. Matt, you like Matt Dillahunty?
He screams a lot, but yeah, he's good. I'm trying to get him on the fucking show, but he's too damn busy all the fucking time. Matt. No, Matt.
You're trying to get Dillahunty on here?
Yeah.
Well, did you just stream? Did I see this right? You were streaming about Game of Thrones with Momma Atheist, and you were assigned to watch it. I didn't actually watch it.
It was Amanda does TV time on a Saturday. It's sort of she has a critical thinking show on a Sunday, and once a month she does a secular Sunday where she gets a lot of big YouTubers together, like Godless Engineer, Dark Matter, Holy Kool-Aid and stuff, and they have a discussion on topics. But the Saturday night TV time is just hanging out with friends and talking about a TV show that both of us have watched. But I'm dating Amanda, and since starting dating her, she has made me watch Game of Thrones, and I did not want to watch it. So we did the TV time that week was about Game of Thrones, with just the two of us watching it.
That's hilarious. Why didn't you want to watch it? Is it too violent? Or
well, no. You see, my personal opinion on a show like that is it's a show designed to appease everybody. I prefer to watch a show that is more controversial, more, this is more made for the show than made for the audience. if you understand what I mean. Like Game of Thrones, I found very predictable. Now, we did watch it fucking 5 and 6 episodes a day, so it was very quick for me. It wasn't over that 11-year period or whatever it was that she invested in it. But I found it quite predictable, and I find that it's, you know, designed. All right, we'll throw a couple of boobs in. We'll get all the men happy, you know, and we'll throw a violent scene in.
That's definitely true. Did she debate you on this? Because she's a fan of Game of Thrones.
Oh,
right?
it's her favorite show ever, man. No,
I side more with her. Wait, did you watch it from beginning to end?
Yes, watch the whole thing.
And you found season 1 predictable? Like when he pushes the kid out the window?
I didn't find that. That's very start into it. You know, I'm talking later on. It did start. And I know about series 5 and the break off and stuff like that. And she had this debate with me and stuff. But I did find the show was designed to appease everybody. And I don't like to encourage everybody thinking the same and everybody liking the same things. I like people to, you know, be cordial, obviously, but to have a problem with the show, to have a discussion about it, to go this, that, and the other I didn't like, or that. And like even the end scene, I think it was whenever she was named Queen of the North and they all lifted their swords in the air, I burst into stitches laughing. And Amanda says to me, why are you laughing? And I was like, every single one of them fucking swords is wibbly wobbly and fake looking, and they were just made the last, you know, you could tell they were just mass produced swords. And I got real panicky about it, and I was like, everybody had a different, you know, not everybody's sword looked the fucking same. They didn't mass produce shit in them days, and you know,
I see.
And it does take away from it. I don't know. I just thought it was a show mass produced to appease everybody, and I had a thing.
Definitely did start to decline in quality. The last 3 seasons, I think, were bad, mediocre to bad. So she probably agreed with you with that. But as the first 4 seasons, I thought it was brilliant.
But that's what that's what I want. I don't want everybody to think the same. I don't want us all to agree. And we seem to. I don't feel there's a middle ground anymore. You know, we can't have these conversations. I feel, especially on the internet where we're discussing and having problems with this, everybody seems to be polarizing.
Polarized, yeah. Well, that's a problem of. That's definitely a problem of YouTube and Twitter that they've helped create.
Yeah, and
you go instantly to your echo chamber, and unless you're one of these people who like I really, honest to God, try to interact, and I actually pride myself on my ability to interact with people from all walks of life and all different cliques and all different belief systems. In real life, I'm really good at it. In YouTube, I'm decent at it. In real life, I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
You know, I've gone everywhere and hung out with everybody and hung out till 4 a.m, you know, everywhere from like Hollywood to the ghetto, you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, no, I think that's the internet age. It's turned us all into, I wake up in the morning, I go to my Christian echo chamber, you probably go hang out with you go watch your atheist stuff, right?
Well, being a content creator now, I'm fucking streaming every single night this week, and it's freaking hard time to get anything, to watch anything. You're trying to find bloody time to do anything. But I'll be honest, man, I don't watch as much Talk Heathen, The Atheist Experience, Drag Not Silvus. You know, I find it's repetitive, which is why I've started to do this and put more of my energy into this. Whenever I was having interviews at the start and having more Christians and stuff, I always would be shouting as much at the atheist as I would at the Christian for using the same phrases over and over again. You know, I don't want to hear look at the trees from the Christians, and I don't want to hear, you know, what do you call that fucking I can't even remember, some philosophical term that destroys God. Anyway, I don't want to hear this fucking thing from the atheist. I want us to have a conversation, and I want to move past what you believe to why you believe it. I know it's a wee bit cliche and stealing it from the Matrix, but we all know why we've made these decisions. You know, we all have made these decisions. We've all lived with these decisions and our beliefs. But why do we believe these things? And that's what I want to dig down to, and that's what I want to get past. Is, you know, there's no point in screaming at each other because you believe what you do and you believe what I don't believe what you do. Okay, right, fine. Can we find out why then?
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just saying that part of the reason why things are polarized more so than they used to be is Twitter and YouTube. You know, you tend to go into your echo chamber more easily with social media. Social media does that more than that's more common now than it used to be. It used to be like, at least in America, there was a generic mass culture that everybody partook in and everybody knew and everybody had an opinion on that was generic enough to not be specific. So like when I was growing up, like a show Happy Days, everybody watched it. Everybody you knew saw it. You might not even know what the show is. You might not have heard of it at this point.
Oh no, I know Happy Days with the Fonts. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody knew that show. You know, you were in 5th grade or 6th grade.
Mork and Mindy.
You go in, every single solitary person you knew saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Every single solitary person you knew saw Star Wars. So it was much more like, you know, everyone was participating in the same things. Now we're all in little isolated communities where we do our little niche. So that's increased the polarization. That's how I see it. You might not.
No. I agree with you. I find that it is, but you know, there's a lot of social reasons behind it and stuff as well. And with the internet age, you know, and being going by your avatars that you use, and growing up in the 80s, I'm assuming you're a little older than me, but it had a wee bit more sense because we didn't have the internet growing up. We had to actually think about things, and if people told you something, you know, nowadays if somebody says something to you, you just go and Google it. And you instantly assume that the very top thing in Google is the truth because it's the one that's been promoted to you the most. It may not be the truth. It may be the one with the loudest voice. That's all. Right. And the problem is, you know, there's so much misinformation out there. And it is causing the polarization because people are being, I wouldn't go so far as saying manipulated, but it's a lot easier now to do that to masses. You can influence the mass an awful lot now with misinformation than you can before. And with that, I see the polarization that's happening, even outside the internet, even in the real world.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Definitely that's the downside of social media. But there is definitely an upside too, because like I have interactions with people from like Germany in real time, you know, that I never would have been able to talk to.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Yeah, like I'm dating Amanda now. She lives in America at the minute. You know, we'll get together eventually, and hopefully sooner rather than later. But you know, I grew up and I went to university for a year studying physics. Man, I wanted to be an astrophysicist, and now I'm dating someone that used to work at NASA. I've done all right, thanks internet.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that type of stuff could never have happened in the past. And so even you and I talking right now, where are you streaming from? I'm streaming from California. You're streaming from
Northern Ireland.
Yeah. See, I mean this is a real time conversation. So that there's definitely an upside, but the downside needs to be. We need to actually strategize to do something about it, because the downside is polarizing for sure. For sure, I definitely agree with that.
Have you any interviews or anything or anybody planned coming up for your channel?
Well, I just had an interview that I really liked with the Hindu dude who was just on T-Jump. Do you know T-Jump?
Oh, yeah.
T-Jump just interviewed this Hindu guy, Aryuna. I interviewed him the Saturday before, so you definitely want to check those out. And you might know Rob from Sentinel Apologetics.
I know of Rob. You know, I've had no real interactions with T-Jump, but I've had no real interactions with Rob either.
What's your opinion on T-Jump and his debates? And do you have an opinion?
Yeah, well, the man has, from what I can gather now, I don't really watch an awful lot of his content. I did more so at the start. We all love his chair, but I found it again very repetitive. And, you know, not getting me wrong, it's not all on him, because obviously he answers the questions that's given to him, but he answers it the same way regardless of who he's talking to. And I found, as I say, I haven't watched him in a while, it's possibly changed, but whenever I found him watching it, it seemed that he had the same rebuttal and the same answers for regardless of who he was talking to. So it felt like he was just testing a script. And not to make a reference to Darth Dawkins, but if you're going to repeat the same thing over and over again, no matter who you're talking to, you're just reading a script.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because people fault him for that very reason, because he's not actually engaging with someone. And if you're running a script with somebody, you're not actually engaging with them. Even if you think they're wrong or stupid or fallacious in their reasoning, you still have to engage with them as they are. You can't just, go on autopilot and run a script, because I think that's legitimate. That's why Dark Dawkins is. That's what's wrong with what he does.
Yeah.
He doesn't, change based on like, who am I talking to? Like I do the exact opposite.
Oh man, we've had him here twice, and it's one of the videos is my most watched video. It's watched like 4,000 times, 4,200 times or something. And I give him one, and at the very start, like 3 minutes in, he was fucking ignorant to me, so I muted and sat back, laughed, because I was like, if he does that again, this is my channel, like this is fucking hilarious. So I come back in again, and he did it again within another couple of minutes, and then I just started muting him. I had mute power. As no, you're not doing that in my channel.
Is this Darth you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I gotta check that out.
Yeah, no, I did not let it happen at all on the channel. And even when you get to the questions and answers bit towards the fucking end, I'm muting him while Randolph is answering the question, and he's wanting to respond, and I'm like, no, this isn't the response section. This is the question and answer section. Just wait your fucking turn. And he starts screaming, so I mute him. And like 2 minutes later, I unmute him. He's still screaming. Didn't even realize he was muted, just still screaming about being muted.
Wow. That's crazy.
Well, I've had a great time, Craig. Is there any questions from the chat? Is there anybody wants to ask Craig any questions from the chat? We're going to go near the end. We do have people that's up for an after party. Maybe go for an hour or so, half an hour, if you're up for that, Craig.
Yeah, I'll for at least a half an hour. I might leave. I'm definitely for a half an hour.
Yeah, perfect. The after party is scheduled. If Dave can do his thing and put it in. Right, we have a question from Dave. Are you a young Earth creationist?
No, not at all.
Do you believe in evolution?
Yes. How
does that fit into your beliefs?
It doesn't really affect it. That's really hard thing that would take a long time to piece out. I was raised too secular, so all of the things that science says are so. I don't contest that because of religious grounds, like the Bible says something different. I take the scientific community at its word. There's a scientific consensus about something. Unless I have really good scientific evidence to not believe in evolution, then I wouldn't believe it. But I wasn't raised to think of the Bible as, inerrant and literally true. So it wasn't really an issue with me at all. I understand that a lot of Christians struggle with that or don't get that, but
that's just the way it is over here. It's sort of European. Like, as I say, I'm reference again to my mother. If I asked her about evolution, she'd just look at you as if you asked a stupid question. I did take some time off the internet, and I didn't come back to the internet to maybe 2017 or so, and I didn't even know fucking some young Earth creationists existed. I started talking to people from America. It was like, what?
Yeah,
this is.
I
thought it was a joke.
That was a thing either. And I was a Christian for 8-9 years, and it didn't even occur to me. I mean, I guess I vaguely knew that there was such people as young Earth creationists somewhere in the world, but I didn't think it was a real branch of Christianity that I was going to. When I first got on Twitter, someone said to me, like, I got a lot of accusations, like, you don't believe in evolution at all. You're so. I'm like, who told you that, dude? Why don't you ask me? No, I'm not. If you're not raised in it, it doesn't even occur to you to think it. It's just not true. Earth isn't 6,000 years old. Matter of fact, before I became a Christian, I remember debating Christians along those lines. Years ago, when I was in my 20s. But yeah. That's a good question. I didn't realize people didn't know that. I have
another question from Smokey. And Smokey, if you confirm Wednesday, yes, we are good.
Oh, is that Smokey Christian?
Yes, Smokey Saint wants to know of your opinions of him, and would you like to do a stream together?
Yeah, I would do a stream with you. I thought there's one thing I saw you doing, the Godless Girl UNT jump, like what that
dumpster fire.
Yeah, it was hilarious, mostly because of her. But he started making some really solid points about I forget now, but I actually addressed it in my thing. I think sometimes you make really good points. You know, sometimes you. I haven't watched all that much. I've only watched a handful of your debates, but I have nothing but. I don't have a bad opinion of you at all. As far as I can tell, sometimes you're on point and, you know, operating. I think did you have a debate with Shannon in an after party? Because if that was you, I thought you were making really good.
Well,
I don't know.
Yes, you can have that conversation, either your channel or Smokey's channel. Smokey will be back here on Wednesday. He will be debating religion is bullshit on is there sufficient reason to believe the Christian God exists. And then on Thursday we are going to have... yeah, it should be fun, man. I'm expecting good fun. Should be good fun. Thursday we have the open mic. You're welcome anytime, Craig. I'll send you links on a Thursday. We'll let you know. After party wise, it is, as I say, scheduled. Religion is bullshit. Slot for you. Brian, slot for you. I think Dave, if you want a slot, if you're feeling up to it, and any of the J brothers. So that should leave. Yeah, Jeff said he was going to come in. Religion is bullshit, and Brian. So that should leave 1 or 2 slots. So if anyone else wants to jump in, that's not that. If Dave could post the link to the Hangout in the chat for the people to join, I think that's all the production shit that I need to do. Yes, right. Craig, man, it has been an enjoyable conversation and it's been nice to get to know you. You know, this is the usual nice bit where I'm nice to everybody. Once we get into the after party, I'm sure you're going to get a few philosophical questions from either side. If we get people from either side in, it's a little bit more heated, a little bit more back and forth, but at least I'm nice.
Okay, sounds good.
So, everybody in the audience, thank yous all for coming. Thank yous all for watching. And as I say, we'll be back on Wednesday. Check out Dave's channel, Critical Cripple, tomorrow night at 9:30 our time in the UK, 4:30 in Eastern Standard. He has his quiz, and it's random questions, everything from force fields round ants to do you want hands for spatulas. It's crazy show. Again, Craig, thank you very much. And we'll all see you back here in about 10-15 minutes. Thank you very much. And we will oink and out.